Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a user guide for the Canon R6 Mark III. Now, if you came here looking for the R6 Mark II user guide or the original R6 user guide, we do have those linked down below. And if you're brand new to the R6 Mark III, it is different from the R6 Mark II and the original R6. Now, the point of this video is to help you get an understanding of how to set up your camera. Now, the way I'm gonna set it up is how I personally would set it up if I was to get it, take it out of the box, and go take it for a shoot. So this is going to be a long video. It's gonna start off where I go through the outside of the camera. It may be super basic at the beginning, so if you're a little more advanced than that, there is a table of contents down below so you can jump around, but be sure to bookmark or save this so you can come back to it at any time, because you can think of it as a replacement to the user manual. But don't forget, the user manual does come in handy every once in a while when you wanna look something up, so make sure you do keep a hand on that. If you came to this video looking for a review of this body because you're thinking it might be the right one for you, this is not the video for that, but we do have a link in the description that takes you to a hands-on real-world review of this body where I take it out into the real world and run it through its paces. So again, this is going to be a long video, so bear with me, but if you understand the basics and fundamentals of how to set up and use this camera, you are going to be a better photographer right off the rip. So now let's start with the outside of the body. When you take the body out of the box, it will not have a lens on it like I do right now. Now in just a second, I'm gonna take the lens off and I'm gonna show you how to pair it with the body. Now this is an RF mount camera, which means it takes RF mount lenses. If you do have older EF mount lenses from Canon, you will need an adapter to adapt those EF to the RF mount. There are adapters, they're not that expensive, and it is a great way to get some great older EF glass and attach it to this camera. Now in this section, I'm gonna go over the whole outside of the body so you understand the buttons, but first and foremost, let's start with putting the lens on. So here's the body and here's the lens. What you wanna look for is you have a red line right there. You have a red line also on the lens. You're gonna line those two up right here, line it up, turn it away from you until it clicks. You hear it click just like this. We press the release button, which is right there, release it, turn it this way, click, and it is now attached. You don't need to be afraid of taking lenses off and putting them on because you're gonna do that if you have multiple lenses. What you do need to be careful with, if it's windy or dusty or raining, you don't want to expose the inside of the camera to the elements. In this case, the shutter is down, which is covering up the sensor that is behind it. You don't wanna touch the shutter and you never wanna touch the sensor or really get any dust or dirt in there. Do not be afraid to change your lenses. But another good rule of thumb is turn off the camera before you change your lenses. My camera is currently off. To put the lens back on, we line up the red line with the red line right there. Boom, get it, turn it, and we're good to go. So the next thing you're gonna need to get your camera going is, of course, the battery. The battery is going to be in the box. It goes down here at the bottom. Like I said, this is the super simple stuff, but it's good to at least get a refresher or a first education on it so you at least know it. The door flips open, just like that, pops open, battery latch, boom. So it's not going to come with the battery in the camera, but it will be in the box. Here you go. Here's your battery. This is currently the LP-E6P battery. That's the one you're going to use in this camera. You're going to move this notch out of the way, slide it in just like that, pop it down, press it in, it locks in, close the door, and you're now good to go with the battery. A good recommendation is always charge your batteries up. You can also charge the battery inside of the camera with a USB-C cable, so that's a good thing to know just in case you don't have the charger with you. And if you are traveling, it's a good recommendation to have at least 2 genuine Canon batteries. I don't recommend buying third-party batteries when it comes to using them in your camera. They might be less expensive, but they might not be as good in the long term as the native battery. So be sure to buy genuine Canon accessories. The next thing to go over are memory cards for your camera. Where do they go? And how do we put them in? So on the side of the camera, we have a door. It is real easy to open. You just press, boom, click, and it pops open. Now there are two different memory card slots in this camera. One is a CF Express B card slot, and the other is a traditional SD card slot. You can use CF Express B, or you could use the SD, or you could use them both in there at the same time to shoot redundant. So whichever you have, you can use. Just understand that the CF Express B cards are much faster when it comes to transferring data, and if you're going to be shooting higher quality video, you're going to want to have the CF Express B card. As you can see, there is a lever right here that you press down, and that goes ahead and pops out the card right here. We use pro-grade digital cards here. They're one of the more reputable companies in the world of making flash memory. But if you're going to purchase a card, make sure you purchase it from a reputable dealership. You've got Allen's Camera, you've got B&H, Adorama. I don't recommend buying cards on Amazon because there are a lot of fraudulent and fake cards that might come in from China that say they're real. I just don't like buying cards from there, so I stick to the reputable places that we shop at. And when you put it into the camera, it can only go in one way. The label facing me, press it in, then we press it down, and you can see that the gray button pops back out. Now the SD card, like most SD cards, just presses in, you press in and it pops out. So this is a pro-grade SD card, and to put it in, it only goes in one way. You put it down, boom, shut the door, click it in, and now your cards are good to go. So now that we know where the battery goes, how to put the lens on, and where the memory cards go, let's take a walk around the outside of the camera to understand the buttons and switches on this bad boy right here. Obviously, you see where the on and off switch is right here. There is lock right in the middle. If you put it on lock, that goes ahead and locks certain functions so you can't accidentally hit them. I barely ever use that lock function, so it's not really something that I use, but you just flick the switch, lock, and then on, and your camera is now officially powered on. To turn it off, we just flick it all the way, and there you have it. That's your on and off switch. I know it's simple, but it's always good to just get an understanding right off the rip. You have a red record button. This is a record button for when you are going to shoot video. You can start and stop it. You can also map out almost all of the buttons on these cameras, and I will show you that later on when we get into more advanced settings, so you can have it basically choose your own adventure based on what buttons you want to do what. This is your mode dial at the top of the camera. When you get it out of the box, it's going to be on green, which is full auto mode. So the camera is going to take care of everything that it's going to do. It's not really the best place to be, but when you're first starting out, if you just want to take pictures, that's okay to do. You also have your scene modes. That's if you're going to photograph, say, mountains and landscapes or portraits or people. We'll see that a little later on, but again, these are auto modes. You also have some custom modes around the dial, C1, C2, and C3. Those come in handy for us when we're shooting, say, video in a bright situation, and then we go indoors. We can custom set those beforehand so we can quickly change and get into that menu setting. We've got slow and fast. That's for video when you're doing slow motion. We've got bulb, which means when you press the shutter and hold your finger down, the shutter stays open, and when you remove your finger, the shutter closes. We've got your manual for full manual controls. We have aperture priority, which is AV. We've got TV, which is not to watch TV, which is not Sesame Street, which is Oscar the Grouch, because I love Oscar the Grouch. You'll hear more about him in a minute, but TV is shutter priority. P doesn't stand for professional mode, it stands for program. Then you have a new mode that Canon includes called FV, which is flexible hybrid. It's kind of like an auto program mode that allows you to do some controls, but not full control, but that is basically the top of the dial. Personally, I'm shooting in manual all the time, and as you become a better photographer, you're gonna wanna take control of the camera yourself, but you have all of these different options to choose from. On the top right of the camera, we have a command dial right here. You can just turn it to the right, turn it to the left. When you get it by default, it is going to be your ISO control, so I can change my ISO higher or lower right here, but again, this is a mappable button that you could make changes to later. In front of the record button is the other command dial on the front of the camera. This is by default is going to control your shutter speed. You go left, you go right. We have a M-FN button. That button right there is a quick way to get into a menu while you're still looking through the camera. And right here is a very important button. This is your shutter button. You're going to press halfway down lightly to continuously autofocus your camera. And when you're ready to take a picture, you press it all the way down and it goes ahead and triggers the shutter, and you are now officially taking photos. Moving on to the center top of the camera, this is your hot shoe. This is a digital hot shoe. So you could put a flash in here, or there are microphones, because if you can maybe see inside of this just a little bit, there are some digital contacts in there that allow you to pass digital information, say from a microphone, from this hot shoe directly into the camera. So it's great that it has a digital hot shoe. Continuing on to the left side of the camera, this is a very important switch right here. That means that it's on camera for stills, and then when you flick the switch, you go ahead and on the right-hand side, you can see that it is now set for shooting video. In the olden camera, I believe in the original, this is where the on and off switch once lived. Now you have changing from photo to video. Right above there, you see a couple of dots. There's 4 dots. This is a speaker for playing back some audio that you recorded. Obviously, it's not going to be the greatest speaker since sliced bread, but it will get the job done. And this little dot right here, that is a microphone. So that's where it's going to get some audio from the top of the camera. Now, if you've ever wondered what this line with a circle through it means, what that means is that is the exact position of the sensor in the camera. I never knew that way back in the day because, well, it was new, but that is what that means. That is where the sensor lines up with that dot right there. Then we have this frosted looking white thing right here. That is a tally light. So when you're recording video, it is going to light up red. And that is the top of the camera. Now let's move on to the back of the camera where there is quite a lot going on. We've got a button. Let's start on the left-hand side that says rate. That means after you take a picture, you could rate the photo from 1 star to 5 stars, but also it says color underneath. This is where you can change your picture style when you're in photo mode or in video mode. Again, a lot of these buttons are mappable after the fact to change to something that you use more often than not. The menu button obviously is very important because that's how you turn on the menu. And this is your electronic viewfinder. Right here is where you're going to look through to see everything that your camera sees. This is very important because I know a lot of people are graduating from using cell phones or cameras that may not have an electronic viewfinder. And it's important, I'm gonna show you this right now. This is the proper way to hold a camera. You have your right hand here, so your finger goes onto the shutter button. Your other hand goes underneath the lens. You tuck in the elbows and you put the camera right up to your eye. It is not recommended that you hold it out here and try to use the LCD screen because it's not as stable. It's also harder to track a subject because you have to go further and it's not as balanced. Whereas when you do this, you tuck your elbows, you plant your feet, you're basically getting into a tripod position. This is the proper way to hold it. This is not the proper way to touch your lens. Always underneath just like this, and that is how you hold the camera and look through the EVF. This is the best thing you can do when taking photos. Now, in certain situations where you need to get high or you need to get low, you have the LCD screen right here, which is a touch panel, but you can flip it out and you can rotate it. So if you need to get high, you go like this. You need to get down low, you go like that, and that allows you to use the LCD screen to get those type of images. That's the time where it's perfectly fine to not use the viewfinder because you can't look through it super down low or super high. So we want to use the flip out and rotatable screen. Now that we got that out of the way, you might be wondering, what is this little box below the electronic viewfinder? That is a proximity sensor. So when I put my eye up to the viewfinder, let's see, if we turn it on and I do this, do you see how the screen goes off? The screen is on, the screen goes off because it switches to using the electronic viewfinder. Sometimes if you get water on it or a droplet, you might be like, wait, why is it not switching? Well, it might be dirty or have water on it. So just wipe it off and you should be good to go. When I put it up to my face, it switches from the screen to the electronic viewfinder. Now, if you wear glasses, now you can see I'm wearing glasses, but I don't shoot photos with glasses because I like to get my eye all the way up inside of the camera. I like to get it all the way up in there, but the diopter is right here. This is a dial that you can switch up and switch down, and the way that you set the diopter is you turn the camera on and you put your eye up to it and you turn this dial until everything looks super sharp on the menu. The menu, if it's sharp, then you have it set properly. But that is for people who don't want to wear glasses, or if you wear glasses and still need a little diopter help. The diopter is super important because sometimes people are like, wait, everything looks blurry and it shouldn't be. Well, just check that you didn't accidentally bump the diopter. It's not super easy to do, but it is possible that you accidentally change it. Moving to the right of the viewfinder, we have a joystick. This is going to be great for, you could move around the menu, or you could also move focusing points on the screen when you need to move your focusing point. Next to that, we have what's called the AF on button. That is another way that you could do what's called back button autofocus. There's a lot of people that might search the internet to see how best to autofocus. I do not recommend using back button autofocus over using the autofocus from the shutter button. And quickly, I'll just explain why. You have to do two different things if you do back button focus. Your brain needs to think harder. I'm going to be holding this down to continuously focus, and when I want to take a picture, I need to press the shutter here. So why would we split two things that could just be done with one press of a button? That's why I recommend using the shutter, holding it halfway down, the shutter button. You hold it halfway down to focus and then press it all the way to shoot, and you don't need to do two things with your brain. Now, this is a mappable button. You can change it, just like the other two to the right. They come preset to features that I personally never use, so I change these buttons, and we'll see that later in the custom menu settings, to things that I personally would use. We have a magnifying glass, so when we are reviewing our images, you can punch in on the image to check it out. You've got your info button, which changes info that is on the screen. The Q button is one of the more powerful buttons that you will use. It's a quick way to get functions on the camera screen that you can tap and change around. You've got a set button right here in the middle. That's basically your enter button. And you have this dial that rotates left and it rotates right. This is going to control your aperture, at least the way the camera comes straight out of the box. So you can do that, or you use it to rotate through your images. You want them to go left, you want them to go right, you want to skip through them quickly. That is how you can do that, as well as get through the menu. You've got your play button. We all know you press that to get your playback. You can swipe right, swipe left, pinch and zoom on this screen. And then, Steven, what is this button called?
Oscar the Grouch.
That's right, this is the trash can. It's where Oscar the Grouch lives, and when you press it, he comes out and he goes, meh, I'm angry. And he was my favorite character as a kid, because I was angry. Some may say I still am. Moving on to the bottom, we know this is where we put the battery, and then right here is your 1/4-20 to put a tripod plate. Now you see there's a bunch of other little dots here. Yeah, you can get a grip for this camera. We don't have the grip right here to put on. Maybe we'll put that on a little bit later, but you would have to take the door off, which there's a spring right here. You take the door off, there's another contact right here. You take the battery out, you put the grip on, and then the door basically lives in the grip. But yeah, the door's real easy to take off and put back on, real easy. Pop it on and boom. So that is the bottom, and that is how you take it off if you were to get the grip. Now on to the left side of the camera, the Lisa left side, Lopez side of the camera. Too soon? Too soon? Not too soon. We've got your ports. So behind these doors, door number 1, we've got a mic and headphone port. So you just move this out of the way, boom, mic, headphone. Next up below that, we have a remote port if you were to use a wired remote. You've got your USB-C behind here and HDMI right here. So let's move these out of the way. That's USB for charging the camera. This is HDMI for video out when, or if you're shooting video to a monitor, you have that full HDMI. That is this side of the camera. And now we're gonna move to the front. We can pop these in. It's a good recommendation to make sure these are sealed because it's gonna protect from dust and any sort of weather. This is not a completely waterproof camera. It is a water resistant. It has some sort of ratings. But look, if you really don't wanna get caught in downpours, because that is when things might go wrong. Let me jump in here real quick and let you know that this video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you're looking to build your very own online portfolio to share your images from this camera with the world, use what I've been using for my personal site at jaredpolin.com for well over 15 years at this point. I use it because it's simple, easy, and affordable, and I don't need to know any coding. To get a 14-day free trial, head on over to squarespace.com/FroKnowsPhoto. If you decide that it's for you, use the code FroKnowsPhoto at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Now, back to the user guide. Now moving to the front of the camera. Not a lot going on here. We can see that it's the R6 Mark III. We've got your release button for taking the lenses on and taking the lenses off. Moving around to this side of the camera, this is a depth of field preview button. That may have been something in 1977. In 2026, when we're recording this, you're gonna probably map this out to something else to give you a different function that's more usable. Now here is a light that's going to blink when you set your timer, and it might also help with the focusing in low light situations, but that's something that I turn off because I don't want it to be a distraction. And other than that, that is the outside of the camera. I hope you enjoyed this section. Next, we're gonna turn on the camera and jump into the menus and show you how I would personally set it up starting shooting photos. Now there's a few housekeeping things I want to get to before we get into setting up the menu the very first time we turn on the camera. You can see that I am recording into this device right here. This just allows me to preview what you would see on the back of your camera and allows me to record it so we can share it in this video with you. It makes things so much easier. But with me being plugged in, I lose the ability to use the touchscreen right here. So I'm going to be using the different dials and switches and buttons to go ahead and hit enter and move around the screen. Keep in mind, you're able to just touch the screen because it's a touchscreen LCD. This is the best way that we can teach you. So we're gonna go through the menu starting with the camera in full auto. Right now it's in full auto because I wanna show you what happens when we turn the camera on and go into the menu system. But I just turned the camera on and I'm faced with this new screen that says password, enter password. You might be like, well, what is the password? And you may go looking for it. Well, there is no password set at this time. You have to set it the first time, and then I'm going to show you what to do. This is something new to Canon cameras, and it's because of the European Union. They made Canon do this. I'm not sure why, but anyway, I'm going to show you how to get around it. We go in the first time, and you can just hit enter and touch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What kind of moron came up with that code?
That's the stupidest combination I ever heard in my life!
You then go ahead and hit OK. In this case, I'll scroll over, hit OK. And the next thing that I want to do is hit do not ask again. I do not want this ever coming up because every time you turn the camera off and turn it back on, it's going to want you to enter the passcode, which is a waste of time and you're gonna miss the shot. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit OK. And now, every time I turn the camera off and turn the camera on, I will not have to enter that password again. After you do update the firmware in the future, you're gonna have to do the password again because the camera basically got reset. Do the same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then hit do not ask again. So let's jump into the menu. Remember, we are set to auto to do this at the very beginning. I hit the menu button on the back, and now you can see I have shooting menu in red. I can dial over. We've got autofocus, playback, network function, wrench menu, and of course you've got a custom control when shooting menu. We just call this the green menu. Now, you might be wondering, where are all the functions? Well, if you're in auto, the camera is not allowing you to change just about everything, because now I'm going to switch into anything but that, basically any of the FVP, TV, AV, and manual, and I'm going to go ahead and switch to manual, hit the menu button again, and look how many more pages there are to go through. There are so many different functions under the red image quality. Before we had about 4, now we can see that we have 10. So as you can see, this is a pretty extensive menu, and I'm gonna go through the menu step by step with you to show you how I personally would set up the camera when I take it out of the box for going and shooting in the real world. Remember, this is how I would set it. You might find that a setting that you learn how to use differently than me might be the right one for you. But again, my goal is to help you get started as quickly as possible and give you as much information as possible on the most important features of the menu. So we're going to start with the red menu or the camera menu, and you can see that it starts with image quality. Right now, it's by default set to JPEG large. So that's what the L with that line means. So when I hit enter and I go into this, we can see that RAW has a dash next to it and it is not selected. JPEG is on the largest quality. Now, personally, you can see my shirt says I shoot RAW. I shoot RAW. I always want the best quality out of the camera possible, and that is shooting RAW. Now, if you're just starting out, you may not understand how to edit RAW. You may not have Adobe Lightroom to edit, or you may not have our Lightroom presets, which make editing much easier when you're first starting. We have a link down below to our presets so you can see how they can help you speed up your RAW workflow and give you a great starting point. But when you're first starting out, you may just want to start shooting in JPEG because they're slightly smaller files than RAW. RAW is much larger, but personally, I'd rather have you shoot RAW and JPEG and save those RAW files for the future because you never know. You might want to always go back. Now let me quickly explain JPEG. That is a compressed file, so it's much smaller, much lighter. The camera is taking a picture, your sensor is looking at the data, or the processor is looking at the data that the sensor captured, and it's throwing out stuff that it doesn't think you need to compress it, and it compresses it to make it smaller. A RAW image is taken directly off the sensor. All of the raw data is put onto the card for you to have. It's a much larger file, but it has a lot more data. Just remember back to the days of copy machines. If you were to take an original and you copied it, and then you take a copy of the original and you copy it and copy it and copy it and keep doing that, you're gonna lose quality. It's a lossy file type. RAW, it's not lossy. You can continue to go back to the beginning and re-edit for 20 years. Because I go back to RAW files from 2003. Wow, that's longer than 20 years now. I go back to those files and I can unlock things in those now that I couldn't do back then. Again, personal choice. If we want to go ahead and set it to RAW, I could just turn this top dial, or you could touch it, and I am now set to RAW. C-RAW is considered a smaller RAW file. That is not what I want to use. I want to use the highest quality RAW possible. Now down here, we see JPEG and HEIF option. I could go ahead and turn JPEG off, or I could go to a lower quality, or medium, or I would never go over here. You can always dumb down a file, you can't dumb it up. So stick to the top and the highest quality possible. If you ever need help, there is a help menu here, and you can go ahead, and I believe I hit info. It says, yeah, info for help, and I can click on it, and it's like having a manual built into the camera. It's going to explain what that setting is. So if you see the info button show up, you can always hit info on the back of the camera to help you understand what the setting is. I'm now on JPEG large and RAW, set OK, and it's set to RAW and JPEG. Moving down, we've got dual pixel RAW. This is currently disabled. This is a feature that Canon added years ago that basically takes two photos at different focuses, and you could kind of tweak them after the fact. This slows you down. This is not a feature that I ever have used in the real world, so I leave this disabled all the time. Now, cropping and aspect ratio is very important. When I click on it, we are set to full. That means we are capturing an image using the entire full sensor versus doing a 1.6 crop, which is a DX crop. It's using the center portion of the sensor. 1:1 would be square, 4:3 would be the old TV, and 16:9 is what you would get if you were, like, when you look at movies, it's going to record the image in that aspect ratio. Now, this is very important to remember. We are shooting RAW or JPEG or RAW plus JPEG. If you were to shoot JPEG and you were to shoot it in 16:9, you are only going to get 16:9 images when you save that to the card, or when they're saved to the card. If you were shooting RAW, the preview on the back of the camera is going to show you the 16:9, But if you go into the computer and hit reset with the raw file, it will reset it to the entire full image. So I'm not someone who wants to bake in the information in the camera. I want to have the raw data and all of it that I captured. So I highly recommend you stay in full. Moving down the menu here, you can see that this one is grayed out. It says digital teleconverter is off. When I hit OK or I tap it, it's going to tell me that it's restricted by the following settings or conditions. Image quality. It's because I have it set to RAW. It's basically a digital cropping mode that will just punch in, but it's going to save that in the JPEG and you can't go back after the fact. So it's basically just cropping in the camera. So if any point you see something is highlight or is grayed out, the camera is going to tell you that, well, because you have this setting on, it is affecting this. It's actually kind of smart. Now let's move on to the second menu of the red option. We've got exposure. Now we've got exposure compensation right here. This is where you would go if you're taking full control of your camera and you kind of know what you're doing and you want to make changes to brighter or darker, or if you're bracketing, which is taking multiple pictures in a row, the camera will automatically change it by a stop or a half a stop or a quarter of a stop every time it takes pictures. This is where you set it, but that is something that is a lot more advanced. ISO speed settings are very important. Currently, it's set to auto. That is a very good place to be if you don't know how to take photos just yet and you're not sure what ISO is. Auto is going to be very competent and very good. But I personally like to take control of my camera and I go in and I set it myself. So I can go in and right now I set it to 100 and I turn this back dial right here, bottom right-hand corner. You can see that the ISO is changing. Go to the right, it gets higher. Go to the left, it gets lower. And then we can go back into the menu. That's how you can change your ISO. Now to quickly understand ISO, the lower the number, the more light that you need. The higher the number is when you're in a lower light situation. The more the ISO goes up, the more noise and grain gets introduced versus lower equals cleaner. But these cameras are capable of going to 8,000, 10,000, 12,800 and still getting quality images. So just keep that in mind. Moving on, we have anti-flicker shooting. Currently, it is set to disabled, but if you do turn it on, it says, if enable is set, the shutter release time lag becomes longer, continuous shooting speeds may become slower. It's really unnoticeable at this point when you do this. This would come in handy if you're shooting in an old gym and it has those old lights that flicker. The camera will do its best job of not shooting on the flick, but only shooting on the or the other way around. It comes in handy. Now, they've gotten this even better though in this day and age when we use the electronic shutter. We have high frequency anti-flicker shooting. Currently, this is disabled. This is super important if you're shooting in concert situations or there's LED lights or there's a lot of screens. You can set the shutter speed to in between areas to match the flickering of the light so that you no longer see the flicker. The cameras have gotten that good. Let me try and show you this. So I'm gonna go recommend TV settings, take off the lens cap. It says detect flicker, do not move camera while shooting. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit OK here and it's detecting. And there it goes. It found the settings here and it's gonna set the camera to that, which is going to match the settings of the flicker, so we do our best job of not getting that flicker in our images, which would ruin it. So for now, I'm just gonna hit no, but you would hit yes, and it would automatically move to those settings. So that is pretty cool and super powerful to know where it is. There is also an option called manual settings. This is where if you don't like what the computer told you, you can go in here and dial. I'm turning the shutter speeds and look at these weird shutter speeds. Normally it's like 1/100th, 1/250th, 1/125th, 1/500th. But here we've got tweener modes and you would just go ahead and set it to this to match the flicker of the light manually. So that is another good feature to have. So let's go ahead and make sure that this is all set to disabled right now. And we're gonna leave that off and go back down the menu. A good way to know that you need to use those flicker settings is your camera's gonna warn you that it's detected flicker. So just keep that in mind. Moving down, we've got external speed light control. That is if we had a flash on the hot shoe of this camera, we could go and control the the speed light control from there. There is no flash built into this camera, so I'm not going to go into that mode. Next, we're going to go into metering modes. Now, this is telling your camera what to look at when it's determining the proper shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, especially if you're in auto. So we're going to see that it's on evaluative metering. That's taking the brightest and the darkest and basically giving you the middle. That is where you're going to be for like 99% of your shooting, but you do have something called partial metering. You have spot metering, which might come in handy if you're shooting concerts or situations where your subject is a different brightness than the background. It's going to read for where the spot is and not look at the entire scene. And then you've got center weighted average, which is taking more of the center portion of the frame and giving you the weighted average. Now, this used to be more important in the film days when we couldn't see the pictures we were taking. But like I said, 99% of the time, we're going to be in evaluative metering. And the last one in number 2 menu is detect priority auto exposure while AF, and it is currently set to on. We're pretty sure this is a new feature in here that only affects when you're shooting in auto. If they have it on, I'd leave it on, and when you're shooting in manual, it's probably not going to affect anything. I've shot this camera plenty of times in the real world and always left this setting on. Moving on to number 3, this is color, tone, and dynamic range. We go ahead and hit OK, and this is where you set your picture style. It says recommended for auto color adjustments to suit the scene. They've changed this in the past couple of years, so if you're coming up from an old camera to this camera, this is different because they kind of just leave it set on auto, but I'll show you how you can make the changes. Auto is generally going to be pretty darn good. A thing you need to remember is that picture styles only affect your JPEG and don't affect your RAW files. Now, you'll see the preview on the back of the camera when you shoot RAW. So for example, if we were to go here and hit Info Change, we're gonna hit Info to change the setting, and say we were gonna come all the way down here to go to monochrome. Monochrome means you're gonna take pictures in black and white. It's throwing away the color detail. If we were to take the picture and we shot RAW and JPEG, the JPEG is going to be black and white forever. No more color, forever. It's gonna be completely gone. But the RAW file, we preview that on the back of the camera, it's gonna show up as black and white, but when we put it into the computer and we hit reset in Adobe Lightroom, it's gonna reset it and give you all of the color data. That's why I love shooting RAW. The last thing you wanna do is bake in the wrong setting and end up screwing up your image. Let's go up to standard as an example, hit Info again. I can come in here and make changes, right? Changes, turn the fame, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I could hit sharpness and I would like turn this strength all the way up. And that would mean that it's going to add a ton of extra sharpening. I don't want that. If you were shooting a wedding and you put all that sharpness up and the bride looks super over sharpened, you can't save that after the fact with the JPEG. So I highly recommend that you make sure that you either shoot it on basic general standard mode so you can make changes later, or this is why I like to personally shoot RAW. But auto does a very good job. Now, color filters, this is something that if you are only shooting JPEG, because I can't do color filters when I shoot RAW, but this is where you could put on all the different color effects. Now, of course, it's restricted by the following settings or conditions: image quality, because like I said, we're shooting RAW. Another thing to remember, on the back of the camera, we have that color button. So that is where you could hit and change the different settings without having to go into the actual camera. Next up, we've got color space. People always ask me, should I be in sRGB or Adobe RGB? By default, I leave it in sRGB, and I've never had an issue with it. That's personally where I leave it. Again, it's not going to affect your RAW file. Clarity, this is not something I'm going to change. I'm going to leave this right there set in the middle. Next up, we have HDR shooting PQ. So this is currently set to off. Remember how it said JPEG and HEIF files? HEIF files are 10-bit files and JPEGs are 8-bit files. This is where you would go in and turn on HDR with the PQ. Now, because I shoot RAW, I want to make sure this is off. It's not going to affect my RAW file, but if you do want to shoot HEIF, that is where you would go ahead and do it. HDR mode is currently off. This is high dynamic range mode. You see that like your iPhone can do HDR type photos where it's super bright and vibrant and it's all over the place. I don't really recommend shooting in this mode, but if you wanted to go in here, you could go in and set dynamic range right here to HDR, and you could see all of the different settings that you have. I'm not gonna go deep into here because I personally don't shoot HDR, but if you were to do some landscapes and you wanted to capture high dynamic range, you would go into this mode and turn it on, and that is where you do it. So let me go ahead and turn it back off so I don't screw up anything later in the camera, because the worst thing you do is make the wrong setting and forget to turn it off and ruin your photos. Let me jump in here real quick because I want to show you our custom Lightroom presets from FroPack 4 in action on this photo right here, starting with Blue's Clues, followed by Brooklyn. We've got C41 for all of those people who want that filmic look. We've got Copper Tone, High C, Kaleidoscope, Mel Brooks, Saltwater Taffy, Thick, and Wet Hot American Summer. And my all-time favorite from FroPack 1 is Skittles. With one click, it goes boom. But new and exclusive to FroPack 4, we've got 4 custom adaptive Lightroom presets called Face Enhance, Full Body Skin Enhance, Eye Only Enhance, and Background Blur. So look, if you want to speed up your raw workflow or give yourself a great starting point, or also edit on the go in Lightroom Mobile, because these presets work on JPEGs and RAW on the go, we created 14 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPack4. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters, and if you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale. Or, if you want to save even more, you can get the Grand Slam bundle that includes FroPack 1, 2, 3, and 4, and of course, Skittles is included. Now, let's get back to the video. One thing I should remind you of is that the changes in here really only are put into effect when you're shooting JPEG for basically everything here. The RAW files aren't affected by this, but when I am setting my color mode, I want that set a specific way so that the preview on the back of the camera looks right to me, because it's showing you a JPEG preview and not the RAW. We have auto lighting optimizer, again, affects JPEGs, but you can go in and maybe turn this on to a different level, and it's gonna help make your images maybe look slightly brighter in certain situations. So it's something to consider when you're shooting JPEG. We've got highlight tone priority. This is currently set to off. Let me hit info to read this. It says, improve gradation in bright areas of images, highlights, enable or enhance may increase noise in darker areas. The ISO speed value can be set from ISO 200 and above. So you can see all the different options that you have here. So I personally don't recommend using this because it might introduce noise in shadow areas, but what it does is it pulls down on highlight areas, but I personally want to leave this off. Let's move on to number 4. We've got white balance and quality correction. So white balance settings is currently set to auto white balance. Now with RAW files, you can change the white balance much easier after the fact. And with JPEGs, it's baking in the white balance. I will tell you that for the majority of things that you're shooting, auto white balance is going to be great for 99% of the time. We've got auto white balance, which is where I generally keep it set. We've got daylight, shade, cloudy, tungsten light, white fluorescent light, flash. You could set it custom wherever you would want, and you can also have custom 1, K2, K3, and K4. So there are a lot of options that you can have. But here, you can also hit the info button, and that is gonna change from ambient priority to white priority. So instead of having your image look maybe a little warmer in color, it's gonna make sure that it's gonna prioritize making it kind of cooler. So it's gonna be a little more blue if you're doing the auto white balance. I generally just leave it on auto white balance exactly where it's set when you get the camera. Next up, we've got lens aberration correction. This is something that I let the camera do. I leave this on because it knows that I have a 51.8 on here, and it's going to have this on, distortion correction is off, and digital lens optimizer is set where it's set. These are things that I don't really go in and tweak too much because these days there's a lot of corrections being done to the lens in camera digitally, especially when you're shooting JPEG, that it's gonna make your image look better. So you go ahead and leave that on. Long exposure noise reduction, I leave this off personally. Even if I'm doing long exposures, I'd rather do any noise correction or reduction after the fact. If I ever do it, I don't recommend doing a lot of noise reduction, but in this day and age, Adobe Lightroom offers you some really good tools that are included in the application for cleaning up some of the noise after the fact. We've got high ISO speed noise reduction. This is something that is currently set to standard. I turn this to disable. The reason I turn this off is I don't want it adding smoothing. The more noise reduction it does, the smoother your image looks, which makes it look unrealistic. Again, this just affects your JPEG. Dust delete data, this is not something that I use, but if you had dust on the sensor, it could go through and basically delete that dust digitally after the fact in all of the images. Moving on to number 5, we've got multiple exposure is currently disabled and focus bracketing is disabled. Multiple exposure means if you want to get multiple exposures on the same frame, for instance, you take a picture of someone as a portrait and then you're like, there's the Eiffel Tower and I want that in the background or over the overlay, it's a multiple exposure. So it's exposing it twice. Now this is only going to affect the JPEGs. You could do more than 2 exposures on the same frame. It's fun to play around with, but again, it's only affecting the JPEG, or it's only going to work when you shoot JPEG. It's fun to try, but don't get too into it too much because it is a lot of fake stuff these days. But that's where you do multiple exposures. Now, focus bracketing comes in handy if you're shooting macro and you want to get a ton of different focus points as you're shooting a macro subject, because it's going to basically take a picture, move the focus, 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 and then you can stack those all together to get everything in focus, and it's gonna come in handy for macro. So that is where you would turn all of this on and go more in depth. But this is just showing you that option exists. Moving on to number 6, this is a very important menu. This is shutter control. So we've got drive mode. Currently you see 1 square. What that means is every time you press the shutter button, it's going to take 1 photo. So we go in here, we can see we've got high speed continuous plus. That's to get the most frames per second shot. You've got high speed continuous, it doesn't say low, but this is more like medium. And then this is low speed continuous, which is funny. They should call high speed continuous medium and high speed continuous plus should be high speed continuous plus. You've got your self timer. This is important. You've got your self timer for 2 seconds, 10 seconds, and then a custom self timer, which is awesome, actually. We hit info in here. You can say, I wanted to take 10 pictures in a row. So let's say we set it to 2 seconds and we wanted to take 10 pictures. You press the shutter button down, it blinks, this orange light blinks in the front, takes in 2 seconds, it takes 1 picture, 2 pictures, 3 pictures, boom. And then after that 2 seconds, starts taking those 10 pictures in a row. So that might come in handy. So generally speaking, if you're shooting subjects that aren't moving that fast and you don't want to shoot that many photos, low speed continuous is fine. High speed continuous right in the middle is good. But if you want the most frames in a row per second, H+ is going to be for you. Next up, we have pre-continuous shooting. This is new in the R6 Mark III. It doesn't exist in the R6 Mark II. This is one of the most incredible features you can think of that a camera could have, because basically you're going back in time to take a photo that you may not have pressed the shutter quick enough for, but it still got captured. The way that this works, here's an example. We've got Kyle Schwarber up to bat. I am pre-continuously shooting, meaning my finger is pressed halfway down. As long as my finger is pressed halfway down, the photos are being taken and saved in the buffer, but not going to the memory card. So you can do this for up to a half a second. That means you're pre-capturing 20 frames. So I wait till he's about to swing, press the shutter, and all of those images that were saved into the buffer now get moved to the memory card, and I can keep shooting and take more photos. Pre-continuous shooting is powerful, but just know you're going to chew up a lot more images if you leave this on. It comes in handy, say, for birders who are wanting to see that bird fly away and you're not sure when it's going to happen. You just keep your finger pressed halfway down with pre-continuous on, and as soon as the bird moves, you press the shutter all the way down and you can go back in time to capture the bird taking off. A key note here with pre-continuous shooting, it's only when you're in electronic shutter. We're going to get into electronic electronic shutter in just a minute, but that is where the actual shutter is not moving, it's an electronic shutter. So you can only get pre-continuous with that mode on, not the regular shutter. Now, interval timer is very interesting because back in the day, you had to spend like $300 to get a separate computer to plug into the camera to allow you to do this. But this is now built in. When we click on it, you have enable, and you can see that you can have it take a picture every 10 seconds for an unlimited amount of time. If I hit info, I can go in and say, well, I want it to take a picture every second or something. So let me dial it down. You could do that. And then you could tell it up to, I believe, 900. Well, wow. You can now do it to unlimited. That's new. It used to be 999 shots, and then you had to start over, or 9,999. Now it lets you do unlimited. That's pretty cool. So we could go ahead and hit OK to lock that in, or just hit cancel here and disable. That is super powerful. Now this is something you would use if you wanted to shoot a time lapse of images, maybe the sun going down or the sun coming up. It's going to shoot, it's basically set it and forget it, and you're good to go. Next up, we have bulb timer is currently disabled because I'm set in manual, but the time that you would use this is if you want to use a shutter speed that's longer than the camera offers you. I believe the camera can do up to 30 seconds. This would allow you to basically hold it down for an infinite amount of time to get that exposure. Next, we have silent shutter function. It's currently set to off, but if you were to turn it on, it basically silences all of the beeps, all of the noises that the camera might make, but then it's shooting with the electronic shutter. It is not shooting with a mechanical shutter. This is to be used in situations where you need to be completely silent and not make any noise whatsoever. It also, when you're shooting in silent shutter function, that's how you can access up to the 40 frames per second with the electronic shutter. So for now, I'll just go ahead and leave it off. Next, we've got shutter modes. It is set to electronic first curtain. That means it's still using a shutter to come down, but not the full mechanical shutter. If we want to go completely silent or to get the 40 frames per second, we can use electronic shutter. It says fast-moving subjects may look distorted, can't be used with flash photography. Now, that is a scary warning. Very rarely do we see a lot of warping. Now you see an example on the screen right now of where you might see some warping with a ball, but that is only in an extreme situation. If there's not a ball sport that you're shooting, it's very rare that you're going to see distortion show up. But it can show up with a bowing of a bat, or if someone is swinging a golf club, you will see a little more distortion. But the difference is in golf, you kind of need to shoot silent not to get Rory McIlroy to yell at you, who's yelled at me twice now at a golf tournament. It wasn't my fault, it was practice, but whatever. So yeah, just keep in mind, electronic shutter is how you can access those 40 frames per second. You might get a little distortion in certain action, but this is still a super powerful mode. Now, just like it says here, you cannot use electronic shutter with a flash. You want to go to mechanical to do so. And lastly in this menu is release shutter without card. It is currently set to on by default, which is kind of weird. What that means is you can take pictures without a card in the camera, which is kind of like taking pictures without film in the camera, which is kind of stupid. The reason you would do that is if you're doing a demo of something, but I rather disable this because I do not want to take pictures if I do not, for some reason, have a card in the camera. Moving on to number 7, we have IS modes, or image stabilizer modes. IS is currently on. You have image stabilization in this body, and a bunch of different lenses have image stabilization. It's a good recommendation to leave that on when you're hand holding. If you end up going on a tripod, then you could turn off the image stabilization in a lens, but I always leave on the body stabilization because it certainly helps when you're in low light situations. Now, digital IS is currently off. Now, it shows you the camera for shooting video, so that is only affecting video. It's not going to affect your stills because digital IS basically crops in when you're shooting video to make it look a little more stable. Still photo IS is set to always, and they also have only for shot. I like to leave always on because that means that even when you're previewing the image or you're looking through the back of the camera getting ready to shoot, the image stabilization is on and it's not herky-jerky. So I leave that set to on. Next up, we've got metering timer. It's set to 8 seconds. You can turn it all the way up to 30 minutes, but that's gonna leave the meter on in your camera, and that is going to burn extra battery. So if I was to not have my finger pressed halfway down after 8 seconds, the metering turns off, which does help conserve some of that battery. So I leave that on 8 seconds only. Image review is another important one, which is cool because they've changed this where it's when you take a picture, the image stays on the back of the screen for 2 seconds. It pops up automatically. But if you're looking through the viewfinder when you're shooting, you do not see it pop up for 2 seconds. In the olden days, a few years ago, you would take a picture, even if you're looking through the viewfinder, the image would pop up and then you have to press the shutter halfway down to get rid of it. I personally turn this off all the time. I don't want any review on, even on the back of the screen. I don't want it popping up. I can always just hit the play button to bring it up when I'm ready to hit play. Next, you can see this is grayed out and it says because of the drive mode, because we're in H+. This is basically, if I was in below H+, it would allow me to set the display, the EVF, to high speed, which is like a higher frame rate looking through. You really won't notice much of a difference, so I leave that the way it is. Display simulation is super, super important. This is set to exposure. So let me just take the lens cap off here. We're gonna point over here and you can see that it's super dark. So as I raise my ISO and I lower my shutter speed, you can see the changing. It's happening right in front of your eyes. So you can see that, like, if it's totally wrong, you're like, well, it's so dark, why would you take the picture here? It's showing you an exact representation of what the image is gonna look like after the fact. You see it, at least in terms of the exposure, right in front of your eye. So we're like, okay, well, what's the right exposure? Like, oh, okay, that looks about right, and then we would take the picture. That is that mode. That is super important. The only time that I would ever disable this is if I was shooting flash, because the exposure that you see in front of your eye will not match what the flash is giving you. Next up, we've got OVF simulation view assist is currently off. So if you were to turn this on, it's going to simulate an optical viewfinder. You are not getting an exact representation of your exposure when you look through. It's just basically going to be bright. You're looking through, you're going to see what the world looks like, but it's not representative of your exposure. So that is personally something that I always leave off. But let me show you this. If we were to put it on, and then I take off this lens cap and I show you, everything is super bright. But if I change my exposure, remember how before it was getting brighter or darker? Now I'm changing it and it's not giving me an exact representation of the exposure. So that could totally throw you off. If you accidentally put this on, you could take a bunch of pictures and they could all be wrong, especially if you're in manual. And the last one in this section is HDR C-Log View Assist. This really only affects video. This is not something that we're gonna talk about right now. We're almost there, we're almost to 10, we are moving to 8. We've got assisted shooting. This is called shooting info display. So we go shooting info display, screen info display. If we click on this, it's gonna take you what's gonna show up on the info screen on the back of the camera. You can see that these are the different options that you'll be able to go through. Let's say I don't want this to show up and I don't want this to show up. I just uncheck it and then I would go ahead and I could hit OK, or I can go ahead and hit edit to edit info display, and I can have certain things that I don't want. Let's say I don't want the electronic level to come on. I can go ahead and turn that off and the electronic level will no longer show up. And then you hit OK and it locks that in. So I hit OK and those are now going to be my screen settings. Now we've got viewfinder info toggle settings. So this is the viewfinder when you are looking through the electronic viewfinder. What are you going to see? These are a lot of the options. I personally don't use that big histogram on the top right-hand corner because I think that takes up too much of my display. I could turn off that option and only have these two options to toggle through. But let's see what happens when we hit info and edit screen. Same thing. You can turn off certain things, turn on certain things, and go ahead and lock them in and hit OK. Next up, we have viewfinder vertical display is on. I would always leave this on because when you rotate your camera from horizontal to vertical, it is going to change and move the settings to the bottom each time, which is so much better than what we had to do way back in the day. Grid display is currently off, but you can set it up in checkerboard, 6:4, and diagonal, all of this, so you could be like a TIE fighter trying to take out the Death Star, that's what it's called, the Death Star. I leave this off. I don't like having grids on, but I know that a lot of people, when they're starting out, like to have a grid on because they try to line stuff up with their composition. I just have a natural grid in my brain because I'm that good that I leave it off. So I leave that off. We got brightness info. So your histogram, you can go to histogram settings. You could do it set for brightness or RGB. So it could be color histogram or brightness histogram. Or you could change it to, remember earlier I said I didn't like the size of it. I could make it smaller, so I could go ahead and make it smaller. I think if you're going to use a histogram, which is another way, another representation of your exposure being overexposed or underexposed, I would recommend doing the brightness one and not the color histogram. Back out here, we've got the electronic level size is currently set to large. Same thing, it could be slightly smaller on the screen if you want it. Again, I turn off the level. Card free space percentage display is kind of a weird thing to say. I rather see a countdown of how many pictures are left than my card saying, you've got 4% left on the card. That's just a weird thing. That may make sense in your car if it's an electric car, but it doesn't make sense here. I want to know how many pictures I have left. For example, if you have a super high capacity memory card, you could have like a 512 gigabyte card in there, and it might be like 1% of that could be another 1,000 pictures left. It just doesn't make any sense. Lens info display. We've got focus distance display. If this is something that you want to change in your display from meters, you could change it to meters to feet. I just leave it in meters. It's not really something that I ever use anyway, so but if you want to know in feet, you can change that there. And then focal length display is set to enabled. This is going to show you what lens you have on the camera. Or when you're zooming, it's great to see that if you have a 28-70 on and you're at 50 millimeters, it's kind of cool to be able to see that. For example, on the bottom right of the screen, it shows 50 millimeters, but if I had a zoom on, it would show wherever I am at in that zoom range. Let me cut in here real quick and say, do you struggle getting sharp, crisp, clean images like these in low light situations? If you said yes, I have a free guide to help you capture images in low light situations. Just look for this orange box over on FroKnowsPhoto.com, put your name, email address in it, hit send it. I'm going to send you that guide for free. Now, back to the video. Next up, we've got quick control customization. Remember, I showed you the Q button on the back of the screen. This is where we can control that. So we come in here, we can go edit layout. It's going to bring up the customization. So let's say I don't want something here. The check mark means that it's on. I don't need image quality to show up when I do that. I uncheck it. But when I scroll down, I have these other options like, okay, I want silent shutter function. I go ahead and I click it, and it goes ahead and puts a check mark on it. And then I could hit info to rearrange. So now you can see that it added that new feature that I wanted here and got rid of the other, but if I hit set, I can go ahead and move it around the screen to put it in a different spot. So that is super powerful. And now when you hit the Q button, it will look exactly like this. We want to make sure that we save and exit because we just made those changes. So I go ahead and hit save and exit. Next, we've got display frame rate set. Currently, it's set to power savings. I like to add it to smooth because Rob Thomas is just so smooth right now, but it just would be a better viewing experience inside of your viewfinder. We've got viewfinder display format. Now this, remember when I talked about glasses, you have display 1, and display 2. Display 2 is meant for people who wear glasses who can't get their eye as far into the viewfinder as I like to get it, so it shrinks it down just a little bit, which makes it easier to see the outside edges, but I want to see the full display, so I leave it there. Reverse display is set to on. I leave it to on. That is when you flip out the screen and rotate it, it is going to be an exact representation of what you see. So you'll see that it will rotate it on that screen. We've got auto power off temperature is set to standard. This is something it really should be in a video mode, but we go ahead and set this to high so that it doesn't automatically shut off at a lower temperature. So we set it to high and it says use a tripod, or it gives you some other information to do. This is to prevent your camera from overheating in most situations when you're shooting video. And if you're shooting stills out on a bright, sunny, hot day in the summer, if you were in standard, your camera, you would see that it might heat up just a little bit. This will let it go a little further before auto powering off. We're getting there. We're on menu number 9 here in red. We've got movie record settings. Now you might be saying to yourself, Jared, I didn't switch the switch on top of the camera to go to the movie mode. But remember the red record button on the top of the camera. If you're in stills mode, you can still activate video recording. So that's what you're going to do here. If you go in here, you can make a selection. Now you'll notice when we get into video mode later, there's going to be a lot more selections that you can choose from, but these are the quick ones that you can set when you're in stills mode and want to quickly shoot video. Next, we've got movie record format. It's currently set to this one at the bottom. We like to go to one just up, a little higher for the better quality, the best bit rate we're gonna get out of our video recording, but we'll dive more into the different settings when we get into the video modes. So we've got sound recording on if we wanna record sound. Audio format is set to 16-bit. We like to go ahead and set it to 24-bit to get your 4-channel recording. You've got audio settings. You could use the built-in microphone. You can have it record be auto, or you could, this is gonna auto do it, or you could manually set it. That's up to you to decide. You can have your wind filter on or off, or in auto. We generally keep wind filters off. So again, this gets a little deeper into shooting your video, but you need to get in there and change some settings for your audio settings. And audio status shows you, now that we've changed it to 4-channel, all 4 of those audio channels working. So that is pretty cool. And finally, number 10, it's showing us video again, but remember, this is only affecting video when you're in the stills mode. So you have your ISO speed settings, your auto shutter settings, as well as your auto level, which is currently disabled. We'll explain in more detail when we get into the video settings where we want these settings, but for now, this takes us through the entire red menu section. Next up, we're gonna move in to autofocus. Now here we are in the autofocus menu, or as we like to call it, the magenta menu. This is very important because this is one of the most powerful cameras ever made when it comes to autofocus, if you know how to use it. So right off the bat, AF operation is currently set by default to 1 shot. Let me go in here because this is gonna take a second. We've got 1 shot, we've got AI focus, and we've got servo. So 1 shot means if I press my finger halfway down, we hear that beep and the focus is now locked on. If I move the camera, as long as my finger is pressed halfway down, it's going to stay locked. But if I remove my finger and I look at something a little closer, it's going to refocus. But if I try to look again at the distance, you see how it's not continuously focusing? That is 1 shot. Now, let's go back into the menu. We have AI focus is where the camera is going to decide should it be on 1 shot or what they call servo. Servo is continuous autofocus. It's really meant to be servo motors that are moving back and forth. So let me show you how this works. As long as my finger is pressed halfway down on the button, if my hand moves out, you see how it's continuously focusing, continuously moving, continuously finding focus? That is servo. So that is going to be great when you are shooting action and you want to track a subject. In most of the situations you're going to be in, servo is the way to be for like 90% of the things. 1 shot is if we know something's going to be sitting in the same spot all of the time, we can just focus on it and leave it there because we don't want it to be distracted by the background or something else off to the side. But servo continuously autofocuses as long as your finger is pressed halfway down. Next, we have AF area. Now, it's currently set to what's called whole area AF. That means it's gonna use everything in the display that you're looking at when you're shooting to find the thing to autofocus on. Now, this whole top row that you're seeing here, that is with subject detection activated. For example, when I go and show you this, let's go here, it's probably, the face detection is picking up Austin at a distance, and it's even picking up his eye. This is incredible. It's using the entire area to do so. So when we bounce back into the menu, you have other options like flexible zone 3, 2, and 1. And then these just keep getting smaller and smaller, but these become custom buttons that you then can move. So for example, here is this box. Now it's showing Austin's face because it's picking it up, but it's generally looking in the area of these 5 boxes. I can use the joystick to move it around. So I can move it around over here and it's gonna look for something off to the left. Or if I move it closer to Austin or move my camera, you see how that box shows up? Then we can do this. It depends on what you're shooting. You might graduate into this mode in the future. Whole area AF is great at the beginning, but if there's multiple subjects in a frame, maybe someone on the right, someone on the left, you might want to switch to one of these other boxes so that you can better control where the focus is going to go. But it is super powerful. You also have 1-point AF, which makes it much smaller, and you've got spot AF. So they just get smaller and smaller, which makes it harder and harder to focus on something when you're trying to track them if they're not near that square. That's why I have a lot of people that call me and they're like, I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. I'm like, oh, you're in spot AF? Yeah, if you have that focus point all the way to the left and Austin's all the way to the right, it's not gonna find him. So generally speaking, the larger is going to be slightly better depending on how many people are in the frame. Now, real quick, we've got the flexible zones AF 1, 2, and 3. Now, this might come in handy if we're photographing, say, tennis, and we don't want the net to ever get in the way. We could make the box a different size and only look for focusing on people in that area. Very powerful. But what happens if you don't want it to focus on the person? Well, you've got these different lock modes here. So let me select the lock mode, go in, and you see how it deactivated the face detect or the subject detect? If we're, say, photographing a football player and they're standing in front of us and we want to focus on that football and not have it pick up their face, this is the exact mode you'd want to switch to. This might be a good setting to replace one of the buttons on the camera that if you need to quickly deactivate the face detect and subject detect, to go to this mode, you could custom set that and we'll look at that later. But right now, for now, I'm gonna stay in whole area AF. Next, we have whole area tracking servo AF. It's on. That's basically what you just saw when we were tracking Austin or anybody that we want to track, so that's good. Here we have focus mode. Now this is an auto-focusing lens that does not actually have a switch on it to go from autofocus to manual. So if I wanted to change this lens to focus manually, which you don't really need to do very often, you would just come in here and change it to manual focus instead of autofocus. And last in this menu is movie servo AF. It is enabled. That means that autofocus, if you were to go into the video shooting by hitting the record button up here in photo mode, it's going to continuously do autofocus very similarly to what it does for stills. So that I leave enabled. Magenta menu number 2, we've got subject detection. Very important to learn this menu. We've got auto, which is going to be very smart for selecting between people, animal, vehicles, or none altogether. Now, if you know you're going to be photographing people, you're shooting a wedding and it's only people, well, or portraits, you leave people on. Now, if you're like me and you go on safari and I'm going to be photographing mostly animals, I go in here and I select animals. So that's that. You've got vehicles and none. I generally don't ever turn it off, so it's either going to be in auto or people for me, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on people. So for example, let's show Austin here at the distance. Look at that. I just took the lens cap right off and it already detected that he was there. So it found him at a distance. Now, if you were going to do birds, you would go to the animal mode and it's going to more than likely find the birds at a distance and acquire them. So that's what it's looking for. It's looking for the people in the frame, which is awesome. So if you know you're going to be photographing animals or dogs, then you want to go ahead and go into that dog mode. But you do want to remember to switch out of it if you're going to go back to photographing people, because it's not as effective at finding the eyes or the face. If you know that you're telling the camera to look for dogs, it's only going to really look for that and not be as good when people are selected. So if you ever find yourself having trouble, make sure you have the right subject detection mode on. Next, we've got eye detection is set to auto. You could have it only select the right eye. Like I have a cat who only has one eye. If I don't want it to select the wrong eye that doesn't exist, well, I could select, I don't even know if it's the left or the right. And I've had the cat for like 9 years. It's one of the eyes. It's one of them. I don't know. His name is Sammy Davis Jr. Kitty. and comment Sammy Davis Jr. Kitty is cute down below right now. Okay, so auto is generally where I leave it to select the eye, and it's generally going to select the eye that is closest to you if you're photographing a model. So I don't ever disable eye detection because I think it is one of the most powerful things ever. Register people priority is a new feature that they added here that I don't use very often, but let's say you want to photograph your kid amongst a ton of other kids on stage at a concert. Well, you will take a picture of your kid, register it to the camera, and the camera is going to know to look for that person first. Then you could have a second, a third, a fourth down the line, and it's going to take priority to number 1, then 2, 3, and 4. Is it going to be perfect in every situation? The answer is no. But if you know that you just want to prioritize that one kid, maybe you have 2 and you only like one of them, you could prioritize 1 over number 2. I was number 2. Now, another example is if you have a bride and groom, you put the bride in as number 1, you put the groom in as number 2, and as long as it has a clear view of the bride's face, it's going to prioritize them over the other person. So keep that in mind for that situation. Next up, we have the autofocus case selector. Now, if you're coming from an older Canon camera, you're going to notice there aren't the same amount of cases that there used to be. Canon has told us that they felt that they've gotten their auto so good at detecting that they don't really need to change the cases as often. Now, if we want to make custom changes, we hit the color button. So let me arrow down here to manual and then hit color. You can see I can change the tracking sensitivity to be more or less, or the acceleration to deceleration tracking to be more or less. That means it's gonna stay locked on a subject a little longer or not be distracted by something that might cross the frame. It doesn't go as in depth as it used to, but it is super powerful nonetheless, and Canon has done a great job with this autofocus. Menu number 4, we've got servo first image priority. Let's go in and see what the help says for this. Info, it says, equal priority ensures a balance between focusing and release timing. Release priority, after the shutter button is pressed, the picture is taken immediately, even if the subject is not in focus. So I generally just leave this right in the middle. I give equal priority to both. Next up, we've got one shot AF release priority, same as before. It's only gonna shoot if it's in focus, versus if you put it to release, even if it's out of focus, it's still going to shoot. I will tell you, this was a bigger deal way back in the day with the older DSLRs where you're like, you think that it is in focus and it really is, but it's not shooting. We don't really have those issues anymore. So I go ahead and I leave this on focus and hit set. Preview AF, it is very important that you leave this disabled. This used to be called in some of the old Canon cameras continuous AF, which was extremely confusing because you thought you needed to have that on. But what that did is if you ever find that you're in a camera and you're not even pressing the button halfway down to autofocus and it's continuously trying to focus or find a subject, that means you have preview AF on, or in the old cameras, continuous AF on, but not the continuous that we want. That's why they changed it, so make sure this is disabled. Lens drive when AF is impossible is on. That means if it can't find the autofocus, it will continue to hunt to try to find the autofocus as long as your finger is pressed halfway down. I leave this on because I want it to find my subjects, so you want to make sure you have a subject there. AF assist beam firing on, I always turn this to disabled. That is that orange light that comes on, that it's kind of a distraction, because if you're in a dark situation, yeah, maybe it helps you focus at something at a distance, but it's also gonna see, the subject's gonna see it and be distracted by the thing that you're doing, so I leave that on off. Moving on to number 5, we've got limit AF areas. So let's say I'm never going to use I'm not going to use flexible zone 2 and flexible zone 3. I can turn those off so that if I have to toggle through the menu quickly to change my settings, I won't be offered these two and they are not there to be a distraction. So I can lock that in and those two will no longer be an option. Orientation linked AF point. I personally leave it on same for both vertical and horizontal. What that means is when I'm in horizontal, it's on the left side of the frame. And when I go vertical, let's say I turn the shutter to the top here, the point is still gonna be at the bottom as if I was on the left and you move it around. But that doesn't matter in whole area AF anyway because none of those focusing points are active for you to select. I don't even select any of these others. That's why I use same for both vertical. Now, limit subjects to detect. Let's say we never want to detect an animal. We would just turn that off. Screw it, cars. I'm never gonna detect cars because everything can detect cars. I turn that off, and now cars will not be an option for me. Lastly, in this menu, we've got left-right eye detection. So you could have totally disabled, auto selection. You could have it be left or right. It's the same as what we did above. If we're never gonna select the left or the right eye, we could just turn that off. I'm gonna leave all of these options currently on. Moving to menu 6, we've got manual focus peaking settings. Now this is only going to affect video. It will not affect giving you focus peaking, which are these red lines when you're trying to manually focus, which is really good. We wish they did that. They don't have that in here. Now they do have focus guide is currently off, but let me turn it on, and I have my camera set to manual right now. Let me just show you what that is. So as I turn this, you see that box lighting up in the middle? It's found Austin. So we want Austin's face in focus. So I turn. We're looking for it to get green in this case. Look at that, it's in focus. But we did that with the help of this assist. That is so good. So I'm gonna turn that off, but you can see how it could be useful if you wanna use a manual lens on there. Lens electronic manual focus, we leave this on off, and the button for clear magnification magnify is off. This is something that affects video as well, and we might show you that when we get to the video settings. And lastly, we've got register recall AF related settings. So if you go in here, you can register a bunch of your custom autofocuses. Let's say you shoot soccer, and then another thing is you shoot automobiles or you shoot kids playing hockey. You could go in here and have custom settings based off of your like. It basically replaced the case settings from before. You can set your custom ones and go from there. I personally don't do this. I think that the autofocus works very well, so I don't go in there, but if you do, you can totally use that section. Now that is how I would set the camera for autofocus. The next thing we're gonna move into is the playback menu. Let me jump in here real quick and say, if you're looking to pick up more Canon RF lenses for your R6 Mark III, Canon has an entire lineup of RF mount lenses that are everything from ultra wide angle to super telephoto and everywhere in between. To get more information on Canon RF glass, go to the link on the screen or in the description down below. And now let's get back to the video. Now we're in the blue playback menu. Most of the stuff in the first few cards is if you're gonna do processing inside of the camera or any of the editing or rotating or converting JPEG to HEIFs or RAW files to JPEGs, you would do that in these first couple of menus. Really, we just jump to the end menu here because this is where we're gonna make some changes. Playback information display. So this is for when you are playing an image back either in the electronic viewfinder or on the LCD screen, you have all of these different options. I would never use number 4. I would never use number 3. I would never use number 5. Like, these are things that I don't even want to come up when I'm rotating through the different options. I don't even like these. So I generally just stick to these two options. And then if there's a change that I want to make, I can hit info. We could do RGB or brightness. And this is all I set it to. So I want these two options first and foremost. So then I can go ahead and lock that in by hitting the OK button. You can touch it on your screen right here. Next up, we have highlight alert is currently set to disabled. I generally put enabled onto this. When you're playing back an image, if there's say you photograph someone standing under a tree and it's a bright day, but under the tree it's shady and you have them exposed well, but outside is super bright and there's no detail anywhere, then you're gonna see a blinky on the screen. The screen is gonna blink with a white highlight area, and that means there's no information recorded there at all, and it's overexposed and just gone. I like to see that, so I leave that on enabled. AF point display is currently disabled. I like to see where the autofocusing point was in playback, just to see that it's on the eye or where I want it to be, so I enable that as well. Playback grid, I leave off, and movie play count is set to record time, but this is if we're playing back movies in the photo mode. And that's it for the playback menu. It's not as intense as the others. The next menu is the purple menu. This is your network function menu, or also how you can connect to your mobile phone when you use the Canon Connect app. It is a really powerful app that allows you to use your phone basically as a viewfinder to control your camera, whether you're shooting stills or shooting video or downloading images from the camera to your phone. Just follow the prompts that it gives you to connect your phone. They've made it much easier than in the past. So really, I'm not going to go through this section too much because, well, let's just say airplane mode is currently off. If you want to deactivate all of the signals coming from this, you could just turn it on and it will turn off Wi-Fi, it will turn off Bluetooth settings, but just know that that's off in those situations and you won't be able to turn them back on unless you go back in and turn them on. Let me go back one card here. This is where if you were to stream from your camera, you would plug in here and then you could control the different settings there if you're going to use it as a webcam. And the last menu is basically unnecessary as well. But if you're someone who gets super intense and you've made a lot of changes here, just know this is here. Save load communication settings onto a card so that if you had two of these cameras or a friend needed the same exact settings for communications, like maybe FTP servers or whatever, you could save it and then load it into their camera and save yourselves a whole lot of time. And that takes us out of the purple menu to the yellow wrench menu, which also is super detailed. Let's start with record function plus card folder selection. So this is where we can set it to shoot redundant photo and videos to both cards. We go in here and let's say for photos, I want to shoot redundant to both cards. I would come down here and hit record options and hit standard, but go to record to multiple. That means photos are going to save to both cards, so I have some redundancy there. Now, if I want to do the same thing for video, I could hit record options and I could say record to multiple as well. But keep in mind that some functions may be limited, such as movie recording size. So remember, SD cards are slower than CF Express B cards. This might be an option where you either leave it on standard, or if you're shooting something smaller, you could definitely put it on record to multiple. Now, the reason it says that is if you are shooting raw video, it will not be able to save that to the SD card. So that is just good food for thought. Playback just means where it's going to grab the photos or video from. So it's going to play back from card 1 or card 2. In this case, it's set to card 2. So going back out, we've got file numbering is set to continuous. I always leave this on continuous. So if I take 10 pictures and then I take the card out and then I put the card back in, it doesn't start back at 0, it starts at 11. And so it's constantly counting up. Now at 9,999, it then goes ahead and resets at the next to number 1 again. Same thing, clip number, continuous. File name, you can go in here for stills and you can change, let's say I don't want it to be 165A, I can come in here and change it to, this would be image underscore whatever. You can set your name or initials or whatever you would like it to be. So I'm gonna go ahead and let's see. Has been selected. The setting screen will close after saving. Okay, I'm gonna hit okay and then go back. And you could do the same thing for movies as well. Formatting is very important. I'm not gonna go and format my card right now, but this is what you want to do when you first put a fresh card into the camera, or 2 cards. You want to format it. So that is telling the camera to wipe everything off of it, delete it, get rid of it, and have it be able to basically talk to this camera so that it's going to better receive your images. It's very important that you don't hit reformat or format if you haven't already backed up and saved your images to a computer, to the cloud, to external devices, because once you do that, it's very difficult to recover and get your images back. So the way that it works for me is I do a photo shoot, I back everything up in multiple places, and when I go out to do another photo shoot and put those cards back in the camera, I hit format and I start fresh with a clean card. Auto rotate is something that you should pay attention to. So right now it's set to on. What this means is on camera and on the computer. So if I was to shoot a vertical image, the way that I would preview the image is to hold the camera horizontally and it's going to get black bars on the left and black bars on the right. I don't like that. I want to use the entire screen, but I still want it to rotate on the computer so that it comes in with the proper rotation. So I go in here and I have on computer only, not on camera. So when I take a vertical image, I have to turn the camera vertically, but I'm using the entire LCD screen or EVF to see the image, which is much better. And then add rotation info for video means if you were shooting vertical video and you want it to come into the computer vertically, we would enable this. So it says, and it saves all of that information into the file. Next up, we've got date and time zone. This is very important that you constantly make sure that your time is set right. Today is January 6th, 2026, and the time, oh yeah, it is. It's technically right. It's 12:30 and 58 seconds. Okay. So you could go in and make the change the way that you want to make the change. You can change daylight savings on or off, and then you have your time zone, whether it's New York or the rest of the world. We can lock that in. Languages, if you speak a different language, it's generally gonna come in that language if you get it in your country. If you get a camera here in the United States, it's gonna be in English. If you get a camera here in the United States and it's in Japanese or Chinese, you have what's called a gray market camera, and it means that the warranty is not from the United States. That's what it means if you get it or someone was messing with your camera. System frequency, this is your NTSC or PAL. So this determines or depends on where you are in the world. Again, if you're in Europe, it's going to be on PAL, but your camera should pre-come that way. And that's why the ones in the United States are set to NTSC. Next up, we've got help text. If you're blind, you can make it larger, keep it small, it's fine. Feature guide is enabled. I don't need this. It's where the camera, like in the auto modes, will come up with the different features and explain them to you. So you could leave that enabled for now. Beep is enabled. That's when we were in the single point focus or the single AF or one shot. You'll hear a beep. You're very rarely going to be in one shot. It used to be amazing to hear a beep because the beep meant you were in focus. But now with these cameras, it doesn't really matter. You could leave it enabled or turn it off. Next up, we have volume. So this is where you could control the shutter volume. So let me go in here and you'll hear it. Look. Oh yeah. Yes. That's if you want to be super annoying and shoot super loud. You know, generally I shoot in silent most of the time at this point, so I don't have that. Now, mechanical shutter, if you're shooting there, you can't control the sound of the mechanical shutter. It's going to be the sound of the mechanical shutter. You've got your focus beep, touch controls, self-timer volume, and beep per blink or per shot when you're doing time lapse. So let's go in here. You can hear every time it does it, it's going to beep like that. Now keep in mind, if we are in silent mode, it's going to deactivate all of these sounds all together. Next up, we have audio monitor. So we've got headphones. We can click on that and you can change the volume of your headphones and also change the different channels that you want to monitor through your headphones. Let's move on to number 4 of 8. We've got screen brightness. So when we go in here, it is currently set to 4, which is the middle. I recommend leaving it here and not ever making it brighter or darker, because if you do use your screen for whatever reason and it's too bright, you might get your exposure wrong, and so that's why I recommend leaving it right in the middle. Same thing with viewfinder brightness, I leave it on auto. It's gonna tell me that I have to put it up to my eye to adjust it, but I leave it on auto. The same thing happens here, is if you're shooting manual and it's extra bright, and you're like, well, this looks good, or it's bright, so therefore you speed up your shutter speed to make it look a little darker, you're actually screwing yourself there, because even though it is brighter, you're getting the wrong exposure, and the final image isn't going to be correct. So I always recommend leaving that in auto. Screen viewfinder color tone, I leave set to 2, and fine tuning viewfinder color tone, I leave this set exactly where it is. I don't want to tweak the colors here. But if you find that you need to do that and you get more advanced, this is where you would do that operation. Next up, we've got screen viewfinder display is set to auto 1. What this is showing us right here is that if I have the screen flipped out, it is only going to show me the display on the screen. If I try to put my eye up to the viewfinder, it's going to stay on the screen. That's why you should switch this to 2. It's going to auto switch, that if you flip out the screen and then you put your eye up to the viewfinder, it is going to switch to the viewfinder. But if you never wanted to switch, you would go ahead and stay on 1. UI magnification, I leave on disabled, and HDMI resolution, I also leave on auto. Shutter at shutdown. This is interesting. When I put the lens on the camera at the beginning, you saw that the shutter was down by default. That is sort of to protect your image sensor behind it, but the shutter is super sensitive. You don't want to touch it. Now, I generally turn this to be open. Now, the reason I do that is I turn my camera off, I turn my camera on often. It's much slower to have it close because it takes a second or two to do that. Same thing when you turn it on to get it out of the way. So I personally leave this to open. That is personal choice. Sensor cleaning, you could do auto cleaning at power off. This is another thing that slows it down. I actually turn this off myself. So I disable this, and I only go in to clean now every once in a while when I'm like, let's clean the sensor, and it's gonna automatically shake the sensor. So you just basically point the camera down just a little bit, it shakes the sensor, and it kind of spit off some small particles if they're there. Because you have massive particles on there to clean manually, please go to see a professional to do that, or go read up on what you need to do to properly clean your sensor, because if you damage your sensor, you are basically ruining your camera. So be very careful in those situations. Manage password is where you will go to turn off, which is what we did, or you want to turn back on that option to have the password. You would come back into here and you can clear the entered information here. But again, the password is not something that I use. Power saving could come in handy. Right now we have screen dimmer and screen off display set to disabled because we're doing such a long video. I don't want it to turn off, but you could go in here and set it to 30 seconds or 10 seconds. Screen dimming in 10 or 15 seconds is a good way to conserve battery power, but that's up to you to determine all of that. Same thing with auto power off, 5 minutes, or viewfinder off in 3 minutes of not using it to save your power. We've got reset camera. This is where you would go if you want to wipe it completely clean. We're not going to do that because we just changed all of these settings. Custom shooting mode, C1, C2, and C3. If we wanted to save the modes and the settings that I have currently set to this camera, we would go ahead and register settings to C1, C2, and C3. So that is so you can jump to C1, C2, or C3 to get to those settings that you wanted. You can clear settings there, and you can also do auto update the settings. Right now it's on disabled because maybe you make changes, but you always wanted to go back to those original settings. It wouldn't do that if you had that enabled. Now remember, this is just on the top dial. So when I turn it to C1, C2, or C3, that is what it's controlling. Now we have save load camera settings on card. I recommend after you set up your camera to do save camera settings on card, then take that file and email it to yourself so that you know, and put in the subject line Canon R6 Mark III settings or save load settings so that you can always download it if you ever reset your camera or want it to get back to that exact setting at that exact time. Finally, number 8 here, we've got battery info. So we can click on it and it's like, we're at 49%. I've taken 5 pictures. The reason it's chewed down so much is we've been making this video for a couple of hours at this point. And so it will tell you how many photos you've taken since the last charge. Recharge performance, that means if you have 3 greens, that means it's a new battery. The older the battery gets, the less charge it's going to hold over time. And when it turns red, it means, yeah, just know that this battery isn't going to be as powerful as it once was. Now, a good thing to notice here is that it says LPE6P. That's the battery that's in it. That's the battery that came with it. If you are buying a second battery, make sure you buy an LPE6P. There are older LPE6 batteries, but if you use any of the older batteries, it might limit the functions that you have in this camera. So that means you might not be able to use all of the photo or video features to their fullest extent if you're not using the proper battery. Copyright information, I can enter the author's name, I can put in Jared Polin, I can enter copyright details, you could have my email address or phone number. You would just go in, tap the back of the screen with all the info that you want, and then you can save that copyright information. So it's saved to all of your JPEGs and it's saved to all of your raw files in the metadata. Show log, this is meaningless. This might be some setting they had to put in there. It shows that I updated the password, changed the password, reset all the settings. That's interesting. So you have a show log. I don't even know who needs that. Manual software URL. So this is a QR code. If you ever need to get to the manual, they have a digital PDF version of it just at this QR code. So you could go back and refer to that. Certification logo, that's something that used to be on the bottom of the camera. It's now here. And then firmware version, we are on 1.0.2 at the time of recording this. This is where you would go if it came to, you need to do an update. Canon would put out a firmware update. My recommendation is always waiting 2 weeks to update your firmware when a new firmware comes out, just in case there's any bugs that show up. If your camera's working perfectly fine for you, there's no reason to do that update right away. Give it 2 weeks and then go ahead and make that update. You can see that the lens firmware is 1.0.0 and the camera firmware is 1.0.2 at the time of recording this. And that completes the yellow wrench menu. Now we move on to the avocado menu because it looks like an avocado. The first thing we see here is customize buttons for shooting. This is the important one. Remember when I was talking about you can customize almost every button in this camera to do something that you wanted to do? Well, this is where we do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit set, and you can see on the left-hand side, we have a camera for stills, and the right-hand side is a camera for shooting video. So any of those button functions on the left side will be for stills, and on the right side will be in effect when you are switched in to video. So you can see you can go through here and make certain changes. One of the changes that I like to make is right here to the set button. So I like to go in and I want to find the option for zooming in on an image. So playback, there it is, right here, magnify image during playback. So I go ahead and hit OK or set, and now that button is set. So when I hit the set button, it's gonna automatically bring up the playback menu and zoom right in 2 times on the last photo taken. So that is great. But one of the most important buttons that I've discovered that I want to change is this one right here, the AEL, the FEL lock button. I hit select, and I am looking for pre-capture because this is the only Canon camera at the time of recording this that allows me with one press of a button to activate and deactivate pre-capture. So I have to find it. Where are you hiding pre-capture? There it is. Pre-capture right there. So now I can turn on pre-capture and turn off pre-capture when I don't want it. So you're not burning through files that you shouldn't be burning through. Now keep in mind there's a ton of different features and functions you can change here. And the way that you know which one you're changing is you can see that it's highlighted in green. So if we want to change this, we can go in, select something else, and make that change. Or you could just leave it where it's set, which is right now it's set to depth of field preview, which I still think is one of the dumbest things ever, but it is set there. Let's say I want to go from one shot to servo. I literally just go in, select it, and now if I press that button on the front, that is what it's going to do. And if you want to make changes when it comes to the playback, we would just hit info here and it's going to switch right to the playback option. And so you see how set is off under playback, and I had zoom set there for when I'm shooting. Well, this is actually pretty cool. I want it to zoom back out. I can then go ahead and hit reduce magnify, and so it will do the opposite with the same press of the button. I can zoom in, go right to it, press set again, and it's gonna zoom out, and I love this customality that I have here. Let me jump in here real quick and say, are you tired of showing your friends and families your images and all they say is thumbs up and fire emojis, but you really want some actual feedback? Well, let me be your mentor. I offer 2 different styles of mentorships. One is a recorded 15-minute rapid fire critique where I take a look at your images, record a critique, and send it back to you. And the other is a one-on-one 45-minute Zoom call live with me where we talk about your images and answer any questions that you have. To check out examples of both of those options and to sign up for your own, head on over to FroKnowsPhoto.com/mentorship, and I look forward to being your mentor. Now, back to the video. Next up, shutter button function for movies. We don't change anything here. Customized dials and control rings. If you look at this, you can make changes. Say you're coming from a Sony or a Nikon, and you want to try and replicate the way you used to shoot, which I don't recommend you do, but you could come in here and say that, well, I want this dial to be something else, and I want ISO to be somewhere else. This is where you would go in and make those changes, but I leave it exactly where it is. Direction set for TV and AV, we have, if you turn to the left, you go down. If you turn to the right, you go up. And the last 2 down here, we don't change or touch at all. Moving on to the second menu, we've got touch shutter is disabled. You absolutely want this disabled because there is an option where you do enable this, and when you touch the back of the screen or even your nose touches it, it's gonna focus and it's gonna take pictures. Leave that off altogether. Now, multifunction lock is where we lock the top of the camera to lock and not just on or off, and that means that anything that is unchecked, it is still able to be used, but if it is checked, it is going to be locked. So this would lock the ring. If we don't want to be able to use touch functions, we could lock that as well. This really might only come in handy if you're shooting video. I don't find a big need for doing it when I'm shooting photos. But sometimes you might find that you accidentally left it on lock and buttons and functions aren't working. Just make sure that you're fully on, and when you turn it off, you're fully on, off. Continuing on, we've got 3 of 5. We've got touch and drag AF settings. We leave this off. That doesn't matter in this camera. It mattered way back in the day. We've got AF area selection control. This is the MFN button. I will show you what this does when we get into showing you all of the different options around the LCD screen or in your EVF. It's just a quick way to get into that. I will show you that as well. We've got sensitivity AF point selection. This is how fast your autofocusing points move if you are doing it manually. I like to have them move pretty quick, so I just go to +1 instead of 0 or -1, and I hit set and we're good. Focus ring rotation, I leave this set where it is. RF lens manual focus ring sensitivity. You could change how fast the manual focus capability is right here. But again, I just leave this exactly where it's currently set. Next up, we've got custom buttons for playback. If we didn't hit that info button before, this is where you would make those changes. We have image jump when you turn the wheel. You do have the option to make changes. You could do a custom number. You could do a display time. I generally just do by 10. So it's just every time I turn the dial, I'm jumping 10 images. That comes in hand with pre-capture, or it comes in handy when you're doing pre-capture or shooting a lot of frames per second. Next up, we have image jump with whatever this hieroglyph is trying to tell me. I might have to check the menu for that or the book for that because I don't even know what that means, but it's not something that I actually use. If you think you can decipher what that is, leave a comment down below. And lastly, it says switch during playback by using these buttons. I leave this off as well. And the final one under 5 of 5, touch controls are currently enabled. If we don't want any touch controls at all, we could turn it off right here and we could hit clear all customized controls, but we're not gonna do that because we just set them all, and that takes us out of the AVOCADO menu. Moving on to the orange menu. This used to be much larger. Now that they have the AVOCADO menu, they've taken a bunch from the oranges and moved them into AVOCADO. But there is really nothing on this list that I go in and change. So I leave this exactly how it is. Well, I guess if you were gonna do bracketed shots, you could change that. Maybe I'll do 7 bracketed instead of 3, but there really isn't much to see here. Safety shift, that's only in football, or that could be illegal motion, and that's a 5-yard penalty. Same exposure, nope, none of these things. We're not setting shutter speed range. We're not setting aperture range. There's no need to worry about that. No need for cropping info, default erase options, nope. Release shutter without lens. Well, we don't want to take pictures if there is no lens on there. There is one random situation where people have done it in the past. It's where they turn their lens backwards and kind of shoot through it, and it kind of gives you a macro look. That would be the only time somebody would ever do that, but macro lenses are pretty cheap. Get a real macro lens at this point. Retract lens on power off and clear all functions, not a thing that we do. And that takes us out of the orange menu and takes us to the very last menu, which is My Menu Management. This used to be super powerful, but now that we have the Q menu where we put things that we can easily jump to, there's really not much of a need to jump into here. But if there are features that you want to get to quickly that you can't just customize somewhere else, you would go ahead and add to my new tab, and we would go ahead and OK. Then we configure my menu, and you could think of this as like bookmarks to things that you want to get to quicker. So let's select items to remember. I don't want any of these, I don't want any of these, or maybe I want to get to anti-flicker, high frequency anti-flicker quicker. I could just put it in here and I hit OK, and now it's saved in the settings. and there it is. So you could add things like battery life or formatting, things that you want to get to quicker. Like formatting is a great thing to put here. So if you do end up filling up this page, you can add more tabs to the next page and the next page, but I don't think you will run into that. And that right there takes us through completely the menus as it pertains to stills. Next, we're going to get into the menus for video. Now, it's not going to be as long, but we are going to jump there right now. Now, in order to get to the video menu, we have to go from stills into video, and that will unlock the video menu. But keep in mind, you need to be in full manual to allow you to get all of the settings that we're going to go through. Now, before you get scared and think this is going to be as long as the first section with all of the stills menu, it's not going to be as long because we really need to just focus on the red menu here for video and a little bit of the autofocus, and everything else is basically already the same. So let's jump into the red shooting menu, and we're going to skip down to movie record format first because we need to make a change here that is going to affect the movie record size right above it. So it by default is set to this 8-bit one, and we like to go to the 10-bit, which is right above it. Now, if you were going to shoot RAW, this is where you would go and set your RAW options, but this is the mode that we shoot in here at the studio. Now, when we go into movie record size, this is where we're going to set the quality of video recording as well as select the frame rates that we're going to shoot at. We can start on the right at full HD as we go all the way to the left and we end on 4K D fine. Now, anytime you see fine, that means that it's taking an oversampled recording from 7K to give you the best quality possible. Now, we like to shoot in 4K U fine, so we get that oversampled image, but we're doing it in that 16:9 aspect ratio to match the TV. So now that we've selected the resolution on the bottom line, we can turn this top dial, and that is going to change the frame rate options that we have. So you see that you have everything from 23:9:8 all the way up to 180p, but certain ones are not selectable. They are currently grayed out based off of the quality that we are shooting at before. So what we prefer is shooting in 23:9:8. This is the most cinematic look. It's going to match what you see at the movies. That's how we like to record our videos here. And then when I turn the top dial again, we get into the compression of the video file. This one right here is long GOP, and then you have intra recording, and we go all the way to the left for the highest quality recording that we can get. Remember, you can dumb things down. It is much harder to dumb them up. So what do you do if you want to shoot, say, in 120 or some of the other settings that aren't highlighted? They're grayed out. Well, when we scroll back over here, we can see that 120 is grayed out, but we need to go back over here to where we have 4K U fine, and if we go to 4K U and then we switch back over, we now have the option for those other frame rates like 60p and 120p as well. Now, if you want more compression, you can go back into movie record format, and we can scroll up here to the HEVC compression with 10-bit. That's going to give you the H.265, which is going to give you a slightly better compression. Now, because I made that change, you may have noticed here, Open Gate has turned from gray into being able to be selectable. We go ahead and select it and move back up into here. And you can see there are far less options this time around, and these are the options that you have, the ones that are lit in white and not grayed out. So keep that in mind if you are going to shoot Open Gate. It's one thing that you can do it, but remember, you can't use all of the settings that the camera offers you. As you can tell, there's no other resolutions you can choose from because you're locked into that 7K because you're recording the entire sensor. I know there's been a lot of talk about Open Gate and that the camera has it. It's great that you have the option. It's not something that we shoot here because it just leads to much larger files. And as you can see, you can't choose all of the options. Moving down the line here, we have movie cropping is currently disabled. Now, I don't crop when it comes to my stills, but in video mode, sometimes you need a little extra reach, or you are using some RFS lenses that are for crop sensors. You would put it on here and you would enable it right here so that it will accept using those lenses for shooting video. And lastly, you can see digital zoom is currently off. The only time that you can use this is if you're shooting in the 1080 mode. It will record in 4K, but allow you to digitally zoom in to that 1080 frame. The only thing that we change here is we do 1/8 stops instead of 1/3 of a stop. So we go here, we turn that on, and let me show you what that looks like. We've got my aperture down here. You can see that we are going at an 1/8 stop increment instead of the 1/3 stop increments as I go down lower. So you can see there's a lot more to choose from. Basically, that's letting you do some fine tuning of your exposure. Next, we have color mode. This is where you can set your picture styles, but when we go in this time, we have 3 different selections to choose from. This is where you can get into your log footage. Now, when we hit info for changing, this is where you find your C-Log 2 and C-Log 3 and all of these other options, but we generally stick to C-Log 2 and 3. As a quick reminder, when I told you I was shooting RAW for my stills and that the picture style didn't affect the final RAW image, if we were to set this to monochrome to shoot video, you would end up with monochrome video. You can't go back after the fact and add that color back in. So basically, all of these settings will affect your final video. Moving on to menu number 5, the only thing I would change here is high ISO speed noise reduction. I go ahead and disable that altogether. Moving on to number 6, we've got an option called pre-recording set. This allows you to shoot up to 5 seconds before the video. So if there was something that happened 5 seconds before, it's basically recording 5 seconds before you press the button the entire time. Now, the reason we don't use this when it comes to video is that it turns off some other features that we do use. So that's why we keep this in the off position. You can see that time-lapse movie is disabled, but movie self-timer is something that I could have used, say 16 years ago when I was recording myself in the backyard. I can come in here and say, I could hit record and be like, count down 10 seconds, and then the record button starts, so I'm not wasting 1s and 0s. Not really a major feature, but kind of nice that it's there. Next up, we've got tally lamps. They are currently on. This is where the tally lamp would show up. It would light up red if I was recording. Now, you might want to turn it off in a situation where you don't want someone knowing that you are recording video. So you could keep it on if you want it on, and obviously off if you don't want anybody to know. Next up, we have IS image stabilization mode. This is where you can turn on digital IS. Obviously, you can't do that with stills, but you can do it with video. It's going to be a digital, it's going to be an extra crop on top to help stabilize if you're in a situation where there is a ton of bouncing around and you need that extra stabilization. Auto level, I keep this disabled. It's a feature that they have which will correct for a certain amount of you being off on your tripod. Magnify record display is currently off and not highlightable right now, but what that does is if you're shooting video, you can punch in while recording video to make sure your focus is locked where it needs to be. Next up, we got page 8, starting with metadata. That is where you're gonna sync metadata with cinema cameras. You can do that right here. You can also do time code, which is helping you sync audio from camera to make sure that it's all in sync. Bye. This is HDR C-Log View Assist. Think of it like a JPEG preview where you could have a final look of an image, but this way with your video, you're seeing what it's going to look like after the fact when you're shooting in log. So it gives you a pretty good representation of how your final edit is going to look. False colors and zebra settings are both exposure tools to help you get your exposure right when you're shooting video. Moving on to number 9. The only thing that's different in this menu is if we go to waveform settings, which is another exposure tool, which is similar to histogram, but for video. We've got quick control, customization. Just like we did with stills, you can come in here and customize the layout of your quick controls. So if there's something you don't want in there, you can just turn it off and be like, nope, we don't want you, and you can rearrange by hitting info and add something else in if that's what you choose to do. And finally, number 10, the only thing that we maybe change here is the temperature, the auto power off temperature to high, but we already changed that early on. Everything else we leave set exactly where it's set. And that takes us through the settings menu for video. Like I said, not as painful as the stills menu. Now moving on to autofocus, there's a few things we're gonna talk about here. You've got your movie servo AF, so we can enable this. This is to allow for continuous autofocus. There were a lot of cinema shooters back in the day who'd be like, I'll always shoot manual. Focus pulling is all I can do. That's when they do it manually. But the focus is so good on these cameras that it's all we shoot with, except for those very few times where you need to shoot manual to get the job done. But we keep this enabled at all time. Now, below Movie Servo AF, you have Subject Detect AF, and its default set to Detect Priority. This is good because, say I was filming and I'm in the frame, and then I walk out of the frame, the focus used to just shift to the background. Now, if you have this mode on, it stays in the exact same spot so that if I walked back in, it would catch me again. AF area is exactly the same, just like stills, and focus mode, this is where you would change to manual focus if you didn't have the switch on the lens. Next up, we've got basically everything that we had before, except different. Here is the subject switching sensitivity. It's how quick it will switch from one subject to the next. You could max this out all the way up to 5, or take it down all the way low to 1. We generally keep it balanced right here in the middle at 3. Next, number 3, we've got Movie Servo AF Speed. This is how fast it's going to rack focus forward and back. If you want it to rack super fast, you can go all the way over to 10. I wished it went to 11, but it doesn't. Or you could go with a slow rack all the way to 1. So this is personal choice for you to decide how you want your rack to be. And every other menu here is already something that we touched base on before for stills, and that takes us through autofocus, but also it takes us through the rest of the menu. Everything else is already set the way that it was set before, even your custom tabs. So like I said, not as painful to go through the video setting mode. Let me take a second to let you know that I've been making videos here on YouTube since 2010. I have well over 3,000 fun and informative videos to help you become a better photographer, videographer, and creative. So if you haven't looked around the channel just yet, don't forget you can check out all of the past videos that I've done, and always remember to subscribe. Now, let's get back to the video. So we survived setting up the camera for stills and video. I know it's a long process, but you get it right, you set it up one time, and so you get more familiar with what your camera can do. But what I want to do now is I've already switched back into photo mode, and I want to show you what you're going to see on the screen or through the electronic viewfinder when you look through it. It might be slightly different than what I see because I'm using HDMI out to show you guys what I see, but I'm going to explain everything starting in the top left where you have manual, that's why it says M, all the way. We're going to go from right down like a race, like a car track. So let's start at the top left. You can see that it says manual. Like I said, that's where you would see TV, AV, or any of the other settings that you're in. To the right of that, you can see it says 1,511 photos, or 1,511. That means I have 1,511 shots remaining. Now, if I press the button halfway down, it's going to show me that I can get 99 shots in a row in the buffer right now. We don't have pre-capture on, but let me take some pictures. You can see that it's counting down, and that buffer went to 95 and then back up to 99 shots, because in the mechanical mode, we're not gonna outrun this camera. If we were to go into electronic shutter mode, yeah, we could shoot at 40 frames per second and we would get roughly 3.5 to 4 seconds of shooting in RAW when we shot that way. So to the right of that, we can see 3 hours, 53 minutes, and 22 seconds. That's if we were to hit the video record button. That's how much time we would be able to record on with the current video settings that we have. To the right of that, we have our battery meter. It's reading full, but remember, I showed you could go into my menu and save the battery info there, so you can see exactly the percentage that is left. Now, to the right of the battery, you've got a hand waving at you. That is showing you and letting you know that you have image stabilization on in the body. So that image stabilization is going to help counteract any movement that you have. Moving over to the right-hand side of the frame at the top, we have flicker reduction is currently off. Below that, you have auto white balance. Below there, you have your picture style, which is set to auto right now. Right below there is your metering mode. Below that is subject detection. That lets you know that your subject detection for people is on. If we changed it to auto, it would say auto, and if we changed it to animal, it would then go ahead and show that an animal is there. That's something to keep an eye on in case you're like, well, I'm shooting birds, I should make sure I have animal on and not people. So that's a good thing to burn into your brain. Right below there, you see exposure simulation. That's letting you know that the exposure simulation is on. That's where, as you change your shutter speed or your aperture or your ISO, you're getting an exact replication of what you see or what your final image will look like right in your viewfinder. That is super important. To the left of that, we see 50 millimeters. So if I had a zoom lens on and I was at 24 millimeters, I would be at, it would say 24 right there. This is very helpful when I'm like, oh, what am I shooting this photo at? Oh, I like it at 35 millimeters, or I'm at 200 millimeters. That's pretty cool, but at least you can see exactly how you're shooting. Now below that, you have a Bluetooth sign, and that looks like it's currently off, because if it was on, it would be white and not grayed out. To the left of that, we have Wi-Fi, and that is showing that the Wi-Fi signal is currently off. At the very bottom of the screen on the right, we see 12,800. That is your ISO. So as I turn this dial on the back of the camera, it's showing you that in orange, this is the dial it's referring to. We can turn that down, and that is changing your ISO. To the left in the middle, this is your meter. So you can see that it says -3 right now. That's because it's off by so many stops because I have the lens cap on. But if I point it up at this light, you saw how, look, it goes to the left when it's dark, and it goes to the right to show you overexposed. So brighter to the right and darker to the left. Right in the middle is considered the proper exposure. To the left of that, we can see the orange spinny wheel is referring to this spin wheel on the back, and we can change it. In this lens goes to 1.8, and then we turn it to the right, it goes up to f22. That is how you control in manual your aperture. To the left of that, that's showing us in orange the top dial for changing shutter speed. To the left is slower, so you can see that this is 1 full second right there, and we can dial even faster. The faster you go, or the higher the number, the faster the shutter speed is, and it tops out at 1/8,000th of a second with the mechanical shutter. Moving to the left-hand side, right there at the bottom, it says full. Full is the aspect ratio, so we're shooting the full frame. If we were shooting a square, it would say 1:1 or 16:9 for 16:9, but like I said earlier, I like to shoot full to capture all of the detail. Right above there, we have H+, that's letting us know we're shooting in the highest frame rate mode. It's also lit green to let you know that you can use that mode because you do have the right battery in there. Right above the green H+, you can see RAW plus large. That's letting us know that we're shooting RAW plus large to card 1, and it also let us know that we're shooting RAW plus large to card number 2. That's so you know that both cards are recording the exact same thing. Right above there on the left-hand side, it says servo, so we're in continuous autofocus. And right above there, it shows us that we're in whole area AF, and that little symbol there with that dot is showing us that we are in subject detection. Another thing you'll see when you're either looking through the camera or on the back of the screen, we got the Q button. Let's go ahead and hit the Q button, and that brings up all of those quick options, the quick menu, so that we can make those changes. Like if I wanted to change my autofocusing modes, we're selected in the top left with that. Let me get back into Q again, and I would just use the arrows or touch the screen to change through those different focus modes. Or if I arrow down, I can go from servo to one shot or AI focus. On the left-hand side, you can see I can quickly go from H+ to H to all the different timer modes. And of course, we can go around the screen and you know exactly what everything else does because I've already explained it to you. Ooh, remember when I changed this to silent shutter function? Right now it is currently off, but if I turned it on, it would allow me to shoot in complete silence. That is a great feature to have. So we turn off Q, we just go back here, and I told you about the MFN button. That's right here. This is another quick button to get to making certain changes. I don't really use the MFN button for this because I don't want to accidentally make something, change the wrong thing. If you rotate the bottom line, you just rotate like this, that rotates the bottom. If you rotate this, that rotates the top. And then to jump to the next section, we just hit that MFN button again. Pretty powerful button to have, so maybe you use it, maybe you don't. I just wanted to show you that it exists. Just think of it like it's another Q button just at the top of the camera. So now let me show you what happens when we hit playback. And this is what it shows you on the screen. You can see if I hit info, the info can change. So I can see how I shot it, 1/125th of a second at 5.6 at 12,800. You can see there's the histogram. If I dial to the left, it goes to the picture before, but I can hit info again and it cycles through and it shows me my focusing points. Remember, I selected it because I wanted it to show my focusing points, but I want to show you some of those blinkies. Look at this. You see that blinking in the top right-hand corner? That means there's no detail there and all of the highlights are completely blown out. Now, if I want to delete an image, I will hit the Oscar the Grouch button and I could hit erase. Now, I personally do not delete any photos on the camera. I do all of this after the fact because I don't want to accidentally delete something that I didn't want to delete. Now, what happens when we flick into video mode, which I've already done? Let's go over what is on the screen here. Starting again in the top left, we can see the video camera with an M on it means we're shooting in manual. To the right of that, you can see that we have 24 minutes and 8 seconds left of record time. Now, if I hit the record button, you would think that it would count down from there, but no, it counts up. So I'm not sure why they do that because I would like to see that it counts down, but this could tell me how long the clip is that I'm actually shooting. So I'm going to hit the record button again to stop it. So we now stop it. To the right of there, we have the battery info. Then you have a little camera with an arrow above it. That's to let us know that its orientation is horizontal, that when we bring it into the computer, it's going to be in that format. If I was to go vertical, you can see that it rotates, and that's how it would come into the computer. So pretty cool that it does that to save you time. To the right of that, you've got the hand again, which we already talked about, which is your image stabilization. We're going to move all the way to the right of the frame where it says auto white balance. Right below there, we've got our picture style, so you already have that set to auto. The one that is grayed out is movie cropping. Below that, we have subject detection for people on. The bottom right of the frame is the same thing that we already said with stills, but I'll show you that your ISO is right there as well on the bottom right. I just turn the dial and it's changing the ISO. To the middle of the camera, we could see 1.8. As I dial to the right, we turn it up and you have those 1/8 stop increments that we set the camera to. You've got your shutter speed to the left. Right above there, it looks like a thermometer. I wanted to say thermostat, but if we were to overheat, it would start to, or that's letting us know that the overheating has been extended. If our camera was to go into overheating, you will see some bars show up, but just know that you need a lot of those bars to show up to finally turn off your camera. To the left of that is movie self timer, followed by the thing with the green dot means we have continuous servo AF on. That's continuous autofocus when we're shooting video. You can see that the channel 1 and channel 2, that is moving because I'm talking, so you can see the meter moving up. On the left-hand side of the frame, we can see the microphone volume, followed by the headphone volume right above it, followed by the frame rates and recording modes that we're in. The 2 signifies that we're saving to the second card, and the AF box is showing that we're in whole area AF. That is the focus mode that we're in. So just like with stills, if I hit the Q button, it brings up the quick menu, and just like before, you can arrow through and make all of the different changes right from here if you would like to, but you could always make changes in the menu system to change something else, to move around the quick menu, put something in that you use more often, but this is how you arrow through, just like we did with stills. You do have that MFN button, which is going to be another version of the quick button. It's basically the same for video as well. So that takes us to the end of the user guide for the Canon R6 Mark III. I know it's in depth and I know it's a long video, so if you got this far, please leave a comment down below saying, I got this far, so I know that you watched the whole thing. Now, we can't go into every little detail and it's gonna take time for you to feel comfortable with the camera, but if you wanna see me in action using this camera, we do have links down below to my real-world review and other videos about this camera that you can always check out. And of course, on my channel, I have a ton of information for how to take better pictures. So be sure to bookmark this, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. Jared, Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.